Welcome to Global Studies with Miss Pritchard. This video is for Global 2 students and it will cover the start of the French Revolution, the causes and the early events. Alright, cause number 1 is the social structure in France. France was divided into 3 socioeconomic groups or estates. The nobility and the clergy were the first and second estates, and they made up 2 to 3% of the population, but they controlled 30% of the land and they did not pay any taxes. All of the other citizens were part of the third estate, and that was 97% of the population. They controlled 70% of the land, but they paid for and produced all of the goods for the nation. So you might think, well, they had 70% of the land, that was pretty good. But keep in mind, they were paying for everything. And it's really hard for somebody who's barely surviving to see the queen and the king and all of these nobles going around in fancy clothes and eating lots of great food when they're starving. Cause number 2, ideas. The Enlightenment, keep in mind it was centered in France, especially in the salons of Paris, and the French artisans, merchants, and peasants were all aware of the changes in political ideas and the thoughts that were going on and the ideas. So they thought they needed a change. And then you have the American Revolution starting in the 1770s, where the colonists successfully revolted against the British, and the French started to think, why do we need a king? We can rule ourselves. Cause number 3, problems in France. The economy crashed. That's because the government was in severe debt. They had helped pay for the American Revolution, and there was the extravagant spending of the king and the queen. You add that into the famine from the harsh winters and the poor crops, that's a serious economic problem. Then you have the weak leadership. Louis XVI and Marie Antoinette were rather self-absorbed and ineffective. They were much more in love with being royalty than actually ruling. The Third Estate was angry and starving, and when people are angry and starving, they're willing to do just about anything to either not be angry or to get food. The revolution starts in 1789. In June, there is a meeting of the Estates General because the king needs money. The Third Estate gets locked out, and that is because the First and Second Estate could always outvote them. Therefore, the king, the nobles, and the clergy never had to pay for anything. This whole meeting was about whether or not everybody should pay taxes. The Third Estate was in favor of that, but since they were always outvoted by the other two, they couldn't win. They make the tennis court oath. That is because they met on an indoor tennis court and they formed the National Assembly, and they promised to create a new constitution and not disband until France has a democratic government. July 14th, 1789, a Parisian mob takes control of the jail and the armory, which was a symbol of royal authority, and it's called the storming of the Bastille. They did attack and they freed 7 prisoners. It's really more of a symbol than a real battle, though. After the storming of the Bastille, you get the Great Fear. That is where peasants start to attack and burn manor houses, and you have many noble families and noble people killed. That is probably a matter of revenge for the years of starving. August 4th, 1789, feudalism ends when the First and Second Estate vote to give up their privileged status and start paying taxes. You might note that they decided to give up their privileges once the nobility started to get killed. You get the Declaration of the Rights of Man, which guaranteed equality before the law, freedom of speech, press, and religion, as well as protection from arbitrary arrest and punishment.